Now hang on, I know what you're thinking. I didn't click into some low-budget Bollywood film, but stick with me and I promise this will all make sense soon. I've always had a soft spot for the Golf, and it's not just the GTI or the R, but every car in the series. It's always been the everyman's hero car, perfectly embodying that idea of Volkswagen or the people's car. And it had such a tough job when it first came in. It had to follow on from the Beetle, which was such a design icon. But it was designed by a legend, Giugiaro, who's fathered more icons in the auto industry than I can show you today. And ever since then, it has been that attainable Q car for those of us who wanted to strike the balance between everyday usability and having fun and keeping up with the best of them on the Autobahn. And that's why it survived 50 years. Not a lot of cars have. And 50 years strong, the Golf is going. VW have committed that it will stay in the future despite their focus on ID and electric stuff. The Golf will remain. One of my most memorable drives ever was in the Mark II. Absolutely loved that car. With that wonderful smooth 16-valve engine paired to a manual gearbox, all those GTI touches, still reminiscent of the Mark I. It's a car that when you drive it in today's age, it still brings a smile to your face. And I think from Gen 5 onwards till Mark 7, which we all love, Mark 7 has to be the modern peak, right? We just look at the GTI, it was 230 PS with a proper limited slip differential. Outside it had all the great modern highlights, still looking like a Golf, but very modern. Inside, still analog enough. Then we had crazy variants like the Club Sport S with 300 PS, the Nürburgring record, you know, a manual gearbox. That was a great, great generation. And up till that generation, anytime anybody asked me, what is the best performance car to get started with, I would always say the Golf, because to me, it's the 911 of hatchbacks. And then came the Mark 8. And while it was modern, and it had, I think, a really nice modern design, quite wide, quite aggressive, and it drove really well, it came with an infotainment system that I still consider to be a crime against humanity. And the poop emoji on top were those god-awful touch buttons on the steering wheel that, you know, for many of us just wrote off the entire car. And now comes the Mark 8.5 facelift. With 50 years of heritage in hand, VW taking on the feedback from people like me and you, and now hopefully, well, let's see, have they improved it enough? Today we're going to focus on the GTI, but I will also run you through all the important variants from the basic, the brand new brilliant plug-in hybrids that I was really surprised about. We'll also talk about the Club Sport and the R, because right now with soaring new car prices, we need a good Golf more than ever. Has the hero of the people come back? Let's find out today as we discover together the brand new Golf 8.5. So guys, rather than something that you might want to remove before you race, today's sponsor is something that you definitely want to add before you race. And that is RaceChip, with their in-house developed tuning boxes and a new pedal box made in Germany and designed to enhance the performance of your car in the best way possible. Let me tell you more about it now. So guys, let's talk about the GTS Black Box first. If you add this to your RS3, for example, you'll get a massive power bump of 60 horsepower and 80 Newton meters, which on a 400 horsepower car is significant. But this is not a one-trick pony. It's not like you just do the tune and that's it. You can cycle between 7 different finely tuned maps through their app on the go. And you can even choose the driving modes and the settings while you're on the go, which is absolutely brilliant. But if you don't want to go for the full performance version, you can also get the RaceChip RS box, which gives you pretty similar performance and all the same configurability that you find in here. And in some countries, you even get a 1-year engine warranty, and they have a huge dealer network available to you should you want to get them to install it. But I should mention, it is plug and play, so it's really easy to just do yourself if you want to as well. Now, this is the other product. It can either be used standalone or alongside the tuning, and this is their XLR throttle response controller. And again, just like the tuning, it can be configured on the go. You can either have a much more race-focused throttle response, or you can have a much more relaxed one that will help you with fuel economy. Again, it's easy to install, plug and play, but this thing is really clever. It even comes with a little touch LCD screen so you can change the modes on the go. You don't need to use the app if you don't want to. And along with the 7 driving modes, you also get smart features like valet mode, limiter mode, anti-theft mode. And again, you can use it either with the tuning or standalone. So a tuning solution and a throttle control solution from RaceChip. Of course, as RBR viewers, I've got you guys a discount of 15%, which is great. Just use the code RBR15 and you'll get a straight 15% discount. And a huge thanks to you guys for supporting our regular sponsors and to RaceChip for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the car. So guys, today our focus is going to be the GTI of this 8.5 series. And where we need to start, I think, is the design. And just so you know, we've got the completely basic car from factory here. The only option on here is the paint. So this is exactly what the car would be like if you bought it basic in the UK. So design, kind of blink and miss it, evolution rather than revolution. The main design changes you're going to see on the front. Let's start with the lights, which are now slimmer and sleeker according to VW. You can kind of see that. They've got a new graphic going on. And then you have a light bar that then continues into our VW logo, which is now lighted. This is becoming more of a fad ever since the EU have allowed this into manufacturers. I don't think it actually looks bad. I will let you guys judge when you see it on the road later when we're doing our driving. Now, of course, every GTI since 1976 has had the famous red line going through our grille area, and our Mark 8.5 keeps that in there with the light going through our headlights, through the grille as well, which looks great. I love the lower part of the bumper, as I did with the pre-facelift car, nice and big and aggressive. GTI gets the optional X-shape lights within those recesses there, which again are unique to GTI, and we've got a painted lower splitter as well. All of that unique to this part of the car. Then we have the GTI badge on the front, which is nice and maintained. Oddly though, we have got the strangest GTI logo, a massive one on the side. I mean, just look at this, guys. What is going on here? This is the exact same badge as we've got on the boot, right? You just know it's like when Abdul ordered one too many badges on eBay and he was like, bro, what do I do with these badges? And his mate's like, yeah man, just chuck it on the side of the car, innit? It's gonna look very good. Why? It's got GTI written on the front and the back. But I guess it's par for the course these days because of what's here. This is something that VW started and Audi have continued as well, where you have to have the name of your brand on the B pillar in case you forget what car you're driving, which you might do in between a VW and an Audi because they look so bloody similar, and we'll talk about that a little when we go inside the car. Our rear sees brand new lights just like we have in the front. Now we've got LED cluster lights which have an optional 3D animation function. This is for when you're turning the car on and turning it off, and you actually have 3 different animations that you can choose from within the car system. So that's actually pretty cool. Then finally we come onto wheels. The wheels that we actually have on our base car are called the Richmond wheels. I really don't like them. I think they suck personally. The ones which are called Estoril, much nicer looking. Then we have the Queenstown ones as well, which are absolutely gorgeous. If you're going to spend money somewhere, I would recommend get some wheels. I don't think you'll regret it. So that's the overall design of 8.5. Pretty damn similar, but some nice little changes here and there. As I said, evolution rather than revolution. Now, let's talk about performance and the other variants that we have. Let's start with the engine, which is still the 4-cylinder EA 888 engine. And this we also saw, for example, in the Mark 7, and it's used in things like the S3. This is the Evo 4 version that's producing 265 PS, which is an improvement of 20 over the last GTI, and a better 0 to 60 of 5.9 seconds, which is 0.3 better. So that's really quite impressive. Sadly though, there is no longer a manual option for GTI buyers in the facelift. You can only get the 7-speed DSG. However, it is quite a good box and it was the most popular previously, and we will show you just how good it is later in the review. In terms of suspension, we still have a McPherson front suspension and a 4-link rear, which gives it nice maneuverability. Our spring rates have changed though on GTI, so they are now firmer, 5% on the front and a significant 15% on the rear. So we'll see just how that behaves later. The GTI has got a 17-inch brake system. Next, the most important components probably that you have in the GTI, the front differential and the steering. The front differential is still an electronic diff that has a multi-plate clutch that's designed in a way to help reduce that feeling of numbness that you have on front-wheel driven cars. It does that now with the help of the Vehicle Dynamics Manager. This was that super intelligent system that helped both the Club Sport Golf and the R be really much more dynamic than standard versions. Now, Our diff communicates with that in order to be better. And our progressive steering has had a big update, with VW bringing in a chassis engineer and ex-test driver from Bugatti. I promise you, this is in the press release, I'm not making this up. The gentleman's name is Sven Bonhorst, and he was brought in to make the progressive steering have some of the characteristics of the Bugatti Sport. I didn't write that, it's genuinely in the press release. Anyway, now one quite important feature that we don't have an option in this car is the dynamic chassis control, the DCC adaptive damper system. This would of course increase the breadth of ability of the suspension in terms of being more comfortable and more sporty, and with the DCC system you can control it within the touchscreen of the car to be as racy as you want. It's a £720 option, and I've read some reviews where they're saying that the car's ride is a bit stiff. We will see later, so it may be one that you want to go for a bit more of a comfortable ride as well. So all of that you get for £38,000 in the UK, and that's exactly as this car is. But of course it's a Golf. We've got a ton of other variants. It starts at 26k in the UK. You can get a 1 litre TFSI. We've got petrol, we've still got diesel, and we've got the hybrids. Now the hybrids I think are actually potentially the most exciting out of the lot, even more than the performance versions, because they've seen the biggest increase in performance and usability. Let's talk about those. So out goes the 1.4 litre engine and the paltry 10 kilowatt battery that only gave something like 30 miles, and in comes a new 1.5 litre engine and a 19.7 usable kilowatt battery that gives you, say in the e-hybrid, 88 miles of electric only range, which is bloody impressive, and transforms this car then into a much more usable, cost-saving daily car. I'm really excited about it. And even if you go to the more performance-orientated GTE, which almost has the same performance specs, yes it's heavier, but similar performance specs to our GTI, you're still getting 82 miles of pure electric range and a lot of the great looks and all the other benefits. So this car really excites me. Kind of wish that I tested this one now. Then we've got the more performance-orientated versions that are out now. Firstly, the Club Sport. This has got much of the same running gear as our GTI, and it's got a more aggressive design, as you can clearly tell on the front end, a lot more aggressive. We've got the larger spoiler on the rear to help with stability, and you can even get an Akrapovic exhaust system for this. The engine, more powerful, 300 PS, a quicker 0 to 60 in terms of our DCC suspension, our front diff, our steering, etc. The vehicle dynamics manager and all these components have been geared up to be that much racier, to work with a Nürburgring mode, which you can also see displayed in the car, to make this a stage higher and a bit more exciting if you want that in your GTI. Then we come to the top dog, still the top dog, and that is the Golf R. Of course, the most powerful Golf, 333 PS, the quickest at 4.6 seconds. Yes, we're still using the same engine and gearbox, though geared to be more powerful or to handle more power, as the case may be. The real difference is still in that 4Motion all-wheel drive system in the Golf R, which is able to send 100% of power to the outside wheel on a turn, and then you've got the drift mode. That's not as important as the fact that this car then feels a lot more rear wheel driven. And of course your dynamics manager, your dynamic chassis control, all of that geared to be, you know, the most dynamic that it can be. And what's nice is that the design kind of reflects the fact that this is the top Golf. I think it looks great. One weird thing though, this Golf R has got a weird update cycle, and because of that weird update cycle, even though it's got the new infotainment that we'll talk about, it retains those awful touch buttons on our steering wheel. I just have no idea why that is. If anybody else knows, I'm not as well versed in VW update cycles, please do tell me. Speaking of which, all of that is great, but it was great in the Mark 8 as well. We still blew it up. The make or break for this car is the infotainment updates. Let's see if they've done us proud. Well, hello, beautiful. Right, now that I've got that out of my system, this is actually that important. The removal of those awful, and the reason that those buttons on the old steering wheel were so bad were because you would end up touching them very easily while driving, okay? And that's not something, you don't want to be turning on heated steering wheel, as kept on happening when I drove the car, and it was just not a good experience. It was so hindersome that it started to overshadow everything that was great about the Mark 8. And that's before we even got to the infotainment system that car had, which, yeah, it was pretty terrible. But most of us use CarPlay or Android Auto anyway, right? So you can almost forgive that. Those steering wheel buttons were simply unforgivable. And now we've got some lovely analog, old-fashioned, straight out of the early noughties, dirty black plastic, lovely tactile feeling steering wheel button. And I am happy about this, as you can probably tell. Now, as for the design of the wheel itself, it's okay. It's nothing major to write home about. It's nice that you have the GTI graphic in there with the red mimicking our front grille. You've got lovely red stitching as well, and the perforated leather on the sides. The airbag is a bit boring. Audi and VW gone for a very similar style, and we'll get onto how similar this interior is to the A3, but this is a bit too flat. You know, I prefer the Mark 7 steering wheel markedly, but I think we all prefer a lot of things about the Mark 7's interior. For example, like gear levers and other bits and pieces. So we got that, that's a win. And guys, make no mistake, we are fighting for the soul of the Golf right now, okay? This is the battleground for the soul of the Golf. So the steering wheel improved, great. Next, infotainment system. This is a massive, massive screen. Before we even get into using it, it is just ridiculously large. I've got my iPad here. Here is my 11-inch iPad, and you can see it is dwarfed, literally dwarfed by this thing. It is massive. Like, it is the size of the 13-inch iPad, but looks even bigger than that. It just dwarfs it, like almost sits above. It does sit above, in some circumstances, you know, your dashboard line. I just think it's too big. And I don't get it. It's funny because you look at that and then you look at that while driving. That's like an iPad screen, iPad 13. That's like an Apple Watch screen in comparison. Like, it looks tiny. Like, it is actually quite small. I don't understand why it's quite so small versus the other one, because you have the space to make it bigger. And the graphics are actually quite nice now as well. We'll go into the graphics in a second. I mean, really, looking at the size of this thing, surely it could be that much smaller and you would still fit the same information in there. And it would probably look less cartoonish than it does right now, because the pixels will be closer together. I don't know. It's just almost done. Is it to try and keep up with the Joneses? Is it to make a talking point? I don't know, but it needs to be an inch or so smaller. I've never said that in my life before. Anyway, the system itself is actually a massive, massive improvement. It's much, much better, okay? I must say that from the get-go. You've got nice big touch points that you can see. Then you've got your home screen, which is completely configurable. So you can change this. All you need to do is hold on one of the tiles here, and then you can choose exactly what information you want to come there, and then that will reflect on here. So a lot of customization available on here, which is quite nice. And it's not just for the home screen. For example, we have a top bar up here, which is also customizable. So let's say I don't want the assist one there, because we've already got an assist button down here. I can instead choose, for example, Apple CarPlay, and then that will change up there. So now I've got a shortcut to CarPlay, which is great. And then we can sing along with Deadpool. So that's your top bar. You've also got a shortcut to, say, these, which are the main vehicle functions, easy to access right at the top over there. Your bottom bar is always your climate control, which is great because it needs to be there. Then you've got the home button here, which will bring you always back to home. There is a further shortcut, which is really important for drivers. You tap the car icon there, you've got your ESC system, start, stop, and your assistant systems. And of course, you can add more, which is great. I like this customization element of this. And then you pull down, again, more customizing, dark mode, light mode, etc., tips. All of this is great. CarPlay, as you can imagine, looks absolutely massive in this, like cartoonishly large, but it's good. It's a good size. Now, as for some of the features within the system itself, we've got a lot of ambient lighting options. And what I actually love about the individualization is you can choose color 1 and 2. A lot of manufacturers just tell you what colors you can have if you're going for a multicolor. Here, you can choose whichever one you want for top and bottom, and then the car will give you your choice, which I think is great. I will show you what this looks like at night because it's much more impressive. Otherwise, you can choose a preset mood, which will then change the ambient lighting. For example, if you watch the Golf thing at the bottom there, we can go from blue to red. And that actually also reflects on your driving screens here as well, which is quite cool. And now this car has IDA, which is a ChatGPT enabled smart assistant. Hello there.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Can you change the ambient lighting color to blue?
Done. The color is set.
That's pretty impressive, right? And that's just normal talking. Now, I haven't had a lot of time to dive into that, but the fact that they've integrated ChatGPT means that as that updates, this can potentially update. So there's a lot of potential there, I think, because we've seen how powerful AI assistants are in getting work done. So I only see that as a boon, and it should help them with their system going forward. Then this entire thing has been improved. The buttons are great because they switch through the content that you can have here so easily. You just go up and down, you can choose different things here, and it's all done through here. So that's to go on the left content, then you can go into the middle, or you can go into the right one. You can change your view very easily as well here. So we've gone, as you can see, into the GTI view there. So you can see we can flick through the different driving views here, including the unique GTI one, which is great. And then you can change the content that you see so that we can go into, for example, select to leave a display instead, which gives you the gear that you're in, or you can have a lap timer, or you can choose the speed. So all of this configurable, like I showed you, it changes with the color that you choose in the ambient lighting as well. And it's nice and clear. I just think that screen should be bigger to kind of match that one, in my opinion. This side has been easy to use as well, so you can choose either your limiter mode or your active cruise control, and then this goes down by 5 miles, that goes up, and then interestingly that goes up by 1 mile and that goes down. It's not that obvious until you start using it, but that's how it works. And you've got your volume rocker buttons here as well. All of that is a good experience. And I also think that the graphics, they're all a little bit cartoony. They could be a little more serious, I don't know. I feel both VW and Audi kind of in a similar boat where again their system's looking quite similar. But I think it's a big upgrade, and certainly living with it, it's had the right information, it's been nicely animated. I like the fact that GTI has its own screen as well. So all of this to me is a positive. Now for some notes on GTI, of course this is a GTI. So instead of the standard seats you get in the normal Golfs, you have got the sports seats here, and they're really good. They've got some strong support on our sides here, both behind us and in the lower seat. They do look a little thick when you're sitting in the back looking forward, but in terms of driver comfort and when you're driving faster, they're really good. And of course you've got the lovely checkered tartan type pattern in the middle, which we come to expect now of GTI ever since the first generation. And of course GTI written at the top here. All of that is nice. Now, I said that the interior and other things really remind me of Audi's cars. Of course, they're all part of VW Group, but I think there's such a similarity between the A3 and the Golf that sometimes I feel like if the badges were removed and you blindfold me and put me in one or the other, I wouldn't know which one I was in. The Golf would now be a giveaway because of the size of the screen, but otherwise there's so many similar things. So the vents, so similar to the A3, and you know, the fact that they're these long horizontal vents with silver trim inside them, then you have another trim on top of it, then some ambient lighting, and then the way that the screen is covered with this black section. This entire center console is so similar. And like I said, even the airbag, there's a few little niggles in here, and it all looks a bit too similar, a bit too incestuous for my liking, like strong cousin vibes. It's not a bad thing for either brand because they're both brilliant brands. I just wish some things didn't look. Maybe it's the direction that cars are going these days, where every interior are going for these stupid, knobby, you know, gear selectors, which are rubbish. I really don't like this. Like, I wish they wouldn't do this. A golf ball, you know, styled gear selector here would have been the right way to go. It should be the way to go. There's no reason why we still can't do something like that. And then swathes of black gloss, which is why this becomes your absolute best friend in all modern interiors. I don't know. I just wish someone would be a little bit more adventurous about these things. One thing I want you guys to be aware of is, like most new cars, this car has a speed limiter warning every time you start up the car, and it's the most annoying thing. To get rid of it, go into assist and tap this off. The issue is every time you start the car again, even if you just stopped it for 2 seconds, that will turn back on. And it's not that you'll be speeding, it's just that these cars sometimes don't know what the real speed limit is. They get it wrong, and then they'll bing and bong at you, and it's so annoying. And I can't find any shortcut. If someone knows a shortcut, BMW, for example, you hold set, same with Mercedes, and it turns off. Here, you have to go in the system. And granted, it's only 2 clicks, but it's still annoying. If anybody knows a shortcut, tell me. As far as I know, there isn't one. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind with this car. Now, there are a few things that aren't on this car that will elevate the interior experience. Things like heads-up display are available. We've got the panoramic glass sunroof. You can get a full 360-degree camera, which of course is useful for parking, and a whole new parking system that basically allows the car to park itself, as you've seen in other manufacturers. So you can elevate the interior experience. Boot space, not as much as rivals, okay? It is under 400 litres, and this pram in here is one of the smallest prams you can buy. Recaro, rest in peace Recaro. I heard they've gone out of business recently. Very sad. Anyway, this pram is so small it can fit into the frunk of my GT3 Touring, right? And that in the back of this has taken, visually at least, looks like, I don't know, 40% of the space. How much more have you got left here? The nice thing about this is the actual aperture is very square and very open. You haven't got like the lights coming in on each side, so you can fit in quite a bit. And this is pretty much par for the course with Golf. Golf users are going to be used to this. So again, nothing revolutionary here, not quite as much as the rivals, and we haven't got an electric closing on our base version either. So all in all, that's the interior. I'm happy with it. I think it really does save the car. It's more modern. It's got the ability to be better with over-the-air updates, etc. We've got ChatGPT. All of this works for the new Golf. Now guys, let's head out. Let's see what the GTI is like on the road, because I've got quite a bit to tell you about miles per gallon, how quick it is. Let's head out right now. So guys, as we start our drive, you hear the bing, bing, bing of the speed dong. And to turn that off, we have to go into assist here and press the speed warning thing. Now, like I said, it wasn't even like I was going over the speed limit. It's just the fact that this thinks I was, so it'll just bling and blong at you. And as soon as I turn the car off and start it again, you're gonna have to do that again, so just bear that in mind. Let us change the background here into something more interesting. I'm gonna go for red for GTI. So guys, first impressions, let's go into sport mode. And this car, despite what it says on paper, is just a lot quicker than you think it's gonna be. It's got tons of grip. The engine is very, very responsive. We know it's a good engine because it's in so many other good cars as well. Mark 7.5 benefited from it. The new Audi S3 has it. It's a really good engine and it performs well here as well. Look at the 0 to 60 on paper and it doesn't scream at you as an impressive figure, but this has got the type of power and it delivers the torque, etc. when you need it, so you can make those maneuvers that are so key for performance driving and when you need to take opportunities as a driver. This never feels lacking to me. And I thought it might do, looking at the figures, but it's really, really quite quick. But I do like testing the 0 to 60 of these cars. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn traction control off. We are in sport mode already. Confirm in the front here, and let's try launch, because of course the GTI does have a launch control. Good grip to begin with, no tyre slip. So we got a speed of 5.3 seconds. That is pretty damn good. It's like a half a second improvement over the official time. I'll head back into ESC Sport. I'm quite happy with that. That is a good speed. And like I said, when you're driving it, it never feels like it doesn't have enough power in any situation. I've been really, really quite happy with the power delivery. And actually the DSG, it's pretty good in following commands. It's got a bit of a delay as you would expect of a more daily car, but it's not the type of gearbox where you're dissuaded from using it. In fact, you feel like using it because you can actually coax a lot more sound out of this engine when you start to play with the gears. Pops and bangs. Otherwise it sounds really quite quiet, but then as you're coming off the throttle and you're dropping down a gear, you do get some excitement out of it. Now of course it's a 4-cylinder engine. We know this engine from the MK2 7.5 from the S3, etc. It's a good engine. The sound is never really the talking point of it, but the talking point is excellent power delivery and reliability. So you get all of that. It's always responsive. I've not had the pleasure of hearing what the Akrapovic system is like, but if sound and a bit more excitement is your thing, I mean, the Club Sport has got to be the one to go for, right? So I would actually say the engine, the gearbox, the speed, quite reminiscent of rivals a stage higher. Things like your Golf R, things like the A35. Not in terms of pure speed, what I'm talking is how responsive the engine is, how quick the car feels on the road, how responsive the gearbox is. It's a similar level to those cars, which is nice because this is a lot cheaper than that. And the other side of this is, of course, this is a front-wheel drive car, right? So what is the grip like on the front end? We are in ESC Sport, and actually it is flipping fantastic coming out of a corner. It really does pile down the speed really well, and it's fun to drive fast. It's fun to, you know, put your foot down coming out of a corner and get all of that grip. And it's a different way of driving. We are so spoiled by these all-wheel drive cars these days that make it, you know, super easy. And it's nice to drive something a bit different, because I drive all these all-wheel drive cars in this, you know, in the hatchback market. It's nice to have something good that's front-wheel driven, particularly in the case where you have to kind of manage your steering inputs because of the front-wheel drive system. Let's talk about steering and the progressive steering, right? Now look, the steering is good. You pile more speed into it and it does get a little bit numb, but I've driven front-wheel drive cars that felt a lot more numb than this. Am I feeling the soul of the Bugatti Persport in here? No. Of course I'm not. That's just ridiculous. Am I having to manage my steering inputs and my power inputs more because it's a front-wheel drive car? Yes, I am. You do get that numbness, but I'm having fun doing it. It's a different style of driving, one that GTI drivers will appreciate. And the point is, at the end of the day, you do have fun. And I think that's the name of the game here. It's got to be able to do the daily duties and to make you smile. And I think this car really does. Anyways, let us switch back into comfort mode and talk a little bit about normal driving. First of all, the suspension. It is the bare basic suspension without your adaptive dampers, etc. And it's quite stiff. It's not like Mark 7 and previous, which I think those cars really struck a great balance of being mainly really good workhorses for daily stuff, but they could still perform the sport duties. Here, like I said, even compared to Mark 8, they've stiffened the spring rates, and it does translate through. I don't mind it so much because I'm quite used to performance cars like the 911, etc., the M2. These are cars that I daily. But if you're expecting the silky smoothness that you would attribute to a normal Golf, it's not really quite there. I don't think it's such a bad thing, but if you do want that extra layer of adaptive suspension, then you must go for the DCC, which will only help matters. It will help matters in terms of being more comfortable and in terms of being more sporty as well. Now, I've personally enjoyed driving in and around town for normal daily duties. Road noise has been okay, like on motorways, and rear passengers have enjoyed sitting in the rear, so it's been comfortable enough. And we did a longer journey as well, and that was quite good because then I went into the driving modes and selected Eco, and we managed around about 40 mpg, which is pretty decent for a quick hot hatch like this. But then when I frame that with the fact that my M2, which is almost 500 brake horsepower, can do 38 mpg on a long trip like that, then it's not that impressive, is it? It's okay. It's maybe better in terms of what the M2 can do rather than something against this, but it's just to bear in mind. And I think then the GTE is becoming more and more of an interesting choice here, because you have all of that electric range, which would be so good for daily duties. It's only going to increase your MPG on longer drives. You've got similar horsepower. You know, how relevant is the GTI feeling without that manual gearbox option as well? It's playing on my mind a little bit, but I think it strikes a really good balance between the daily and then making you smile as well. Now, if you want to go a stage higher, Club Sport is of course the way to go. When I originally drove it, hands up, I didn't have enough time of pre-prep before the video to learn where the traction control stuff was, etc. And I didn't have the car in the right settings to enjoy it. And then when I drove it again, having fixed the settings, it was a great car. So I think it'll only be better in this, particularly with all of this sorted out. If you get the Akrapovic system as well in the exhaust, I'm sure it's going to at least give that extra bit of emotion that someone getting a club sport might want to get. Then of course we have the Golf R. Excited to see what that's like. Loved it last time, apart from the nightmare of the interior system. So having driven this, I'm impressed with its ability to meld daily tasks along with having fun on the road. And while it doesn't top the charts on paper, when you actually drive it, it is genuinely enjoyable. If you crave something sportier, you've got Club Sport and R, but with the price of new cars rising anyway, to me, I feel great about this, that the Golf is still here as the people's hero. You have the GTI available at a much more sensible price point to give you some fun. And versus Mark 8, I can almost solely attribute the success of this car down to the infotainment and the steering wheel, which should be a big eye-opening and a wake-up call for manufacturers that making everything touch is not an achievement, okay? Beware. For me, I'm just thrilled to be able to say, if someone asks me again, what do you recommend as an entry-level performance hatchback, I can say Golf GTI again, and that warms my heart. And what better 50-year achievement for VW than bringing back the Golf to where it should be. See you guys next time.